Clean the sawdust off, make it look like I'm not in the middle of a construction zone here. Big thanks to Jensen USA for making this possible. Jensen is an online retailer here in the United States of America. They are a leading dealer for this bike brand. They have these bikes in stock, available now. You know you're getting a genuine product with Jensen USA. When they send you a bike, it's not like this. They take a bike out, they properly build it, they go through it, they set it up for you, and then they ship it to you in a Jensen USA box. Much easier unboxing experience than what I'm about to have here. Scroll down to the description below, hit the link right there. It takes you right over their website where you can learn all about this bike right here. And anything you purchase from that link will help support my videos. And that's a big part of how we make this all happen. So thanks to all of you for your support, and thanks to Jensen for making this possible. Let's crack this open and see what this is. Now, as though this is a mystery, you saw the thumbnail, you know this is gonna be a Yeti SB160, but you try to announce what it is at the end, you say the things first, that's how you do it. Okay, I liked the 140. I think I'm gonna like this a lot. Let's check this out. And this is not gonna be quite what you might be expecting unless you saw the thumbnail. Oh man, take a look at this. Nice. That's right, it's not turquoise, it's fluoride. I'm excited to get this thing put together. I'm gonna throw my usual wheels and tires on here to eliminate that variable from the whole thing. And I'll probably throw on my usual cockpit as well, just to keep things as consistent as I can amongst my whole quiver of bikes. Do you feel sick, Riley? Do you feel sick?
Super sick.
I think you got a case of zip tie fever. When I was chatting with Yeti about the bike, they were offering to send a frame set, and I said, no, if you have anything with some Shimano parts, that would be super helpful. And they mentioned that they have a pretty sweet entry-level price point build with factory level suspension. And so I said, hey, let's just do that right there. So SLX brakes, SLX drivetrain, stuff works awesome. And it'll be interesting to compare this price point to like the price point Ibis hits with the Ripmo V2S in like an SLX-ish build. So we'll look at some of that stuff later. For now, I just gotta find some wheels and put this together. Riley loves this tool as much as I do.
That might be the worst sound I've ever heard.
This is a big rotor right here. And as I was unboxing this, that is a really big rotor. I have never ridden a 220 front rotor. That'll change today. Hit the subscribe button if you're excited. This is the Yeti SB160. The frame gets 160 millimeters of rear travel. It's got a 170 mil travel Fox 38 fork up front. It's probably most similar to the Transition Spire that I was riding a couple months ago. The bike has a pretty healthy reach measurement, right around 465 or so. This is a size medium. I'm 5'8", 174 centimeters if you live elsewhere in the world. The wheelbase is also longer than the Ripmo, but not a ton longer. What's interesting is this is a 64 head tube. The Spire is a 63. I'm excited to get this bike on the trail. In the fall, I was riding the SB140, and that was part of like a big relaunch Yeti did with its mountain bike lineup. And this has a lot of the same updates that the 140 had. Updated pivot hardware, updated pivot bearings. The down tube has been moved back a little bit. Water bottle clearance still exists, but I think it got attached smaller. However, you got like 25 millimeters more down tube clearance. You got a more high quality frame construction. It's like DH durability tested. I'm not sure what that means exactly, but they were saying that it's an upgraded significantly frame layup. And then the cable routing is just more adaptable than the previous generation. Clamps things more in place, should be quieter. So a bunch of cool updates. The SB150 generally had a pretty solid following, so this should be even better. I love that SB130 lunch ride. I like the 140 quite a bit, and I'm super optimistic that this thing is gonna be the bee's knees, the cat's meow. Should we just leave these zip ties as such?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And just like that, got the SB160 put together. Let's get this thing out on the trails. I'm excited to ride this thing. I hope you're excited to chit chat about it. It's already been a few weeks since I got the SB160 put together, and man, we've had quite a bit of a relationship packed into a tight little period of time here. Sometimes that's how the best relationships go. Right away, I took this thing on as many rides as I could. I wanted to log some miles on it, and the very first ride, I had a good time, I had fun, but the The bike is super fast, super stuck to the ground. Well, today's the first ride aboard the SB160. I tried to bed the brakes in a little bit and set the suspension up good as I could. But yeah, here we go, real fresh, actual first tracks. Hello.
Hey.
Howdy. Hey. Hello. Nice view today, huh?
Yeah, unreal.
Yeah. See you guys down there. That was interesting. That was real fun. Come on, brakes. Bed in quick. This bike's gonna need some more volume reduction. It's quite stuck to the ground, a very safe and fast kind of a way. I'm not really trying to go that fast, so I might add the volume reduction so I can get a little poppier, and I might raise my handlebars a little bit. I'll do the handlebars right now, and then the volume will be, in the next few days in the workshop. Let's bust out the Allen key and get tweaking. Just cracked open the X2. Came with 2 volume reducers. I'm gonna stick another one in here. Okay, I got 2 more volume reducers in here to get this thing feeling as progressive as possible. I want this to be a very poppy bicycle. My riding style is not so much stuck to the ground. I'm relatively light in the world of mountain bike riders, so I try to float over things. So it was fun, it did the job, but I wanted to tweak it a little bit. And so this is where the story begins. I'm blown away at how malleable this package is, and I am really thrilled with how this thing's riding now, but it wasn't that way at first. So first ride or two, I started noticing things I gotta do. Well, stack height was a big one. I also wanted to scooch my brake levers further out, so I had to adjust the little Shimano shifter a little bit from how it came and flip it to the other side of the brake lever, so I could get my levers outboard so I could get my regular 760 bar width working for me. So that was a small change, but it helped me a lot psychologically. Next up, getting the stack height sorted out. I GoPro'd some of that on the trail. And man, I don't know the numbers offhand, but I feel like stack height is the new reach because stack height varies widely amongst manufacturers, whereas reach numbers are pretty consistent. I've been riding a lot of bikes in the 460 range for reach. I don't remember what this bike is off the top of my head, but the reach felt long but appropriate, and as I raised the handlebars up with more spacers under the stem, that does shrink the reach ever so slightly, but I just wanted it to be easier to yank the front end off the ground. And getting those spacers under the stem, that was fantastic. I also went to a 45 mil stem, which ended up feeling really good. I feel like I started with the 40 mil thinking the bike was gonna be pretty big, and I've been liking that 45 a little bit more. So that's where I'm at with the cockpit. The biggest change to this bike has not been covering it in stickers top to bottom. That was a lot of fun. Did that for a Patreon riding tutorial, how to not look like a squid. Every month, I post a full-length riding tutorial only over to my Patreon page. This month's tutorial is how to not ride like a squid. A squid is an egregiously unknowledgeable beginner who's a danger to themselves and anyone else nearby. It's hard to time that jump out of that berm.
Bet it'd be a lot easier if your bike wasn't covered in stickers.
100%. Forgot this one. I'm gonna be finding these stickers for months. But now we've got it back to original Prostachio status. The biggest change has definitely been the suspension. It takes a long time to break in the bigger Fox components. So the X2 shock and the 38 fork plan on at least 10 to 15 hours of ride time before they really open up and start feeling appropriate. But once you do break it in, the 38s feel really good. Once I got the suspension broken in and it was feeling somewhat more appropriate, I did throw in my volume reducers. I did 2 more into the fork and I did 2 more into the X2 rear shock. Back at it again. Added maximum volume reducers to the rear shock. Added 2 more to the fork, so I got 4 fork volume reducers. Running very similar air pressure, trying to make the bike a little poppier. It was a lot of traction last time, more than I was looking for. So today, we're gonna see how this feels, but we're gonna float around and see if we're on a cloud on the trails. As the name implies, a volume reducer shrinks the internal air volume of the rear shock. That in turn makes it more difficult to compress the shock towards the end of the stroke, which is referred to as the shock's progression. This means that as I compress into the bike and preload for jumps, the bike's going to be more supportive and allow me to spring a little bit higher in the air, creating a more poppy ride feel. What a difference that made. For the better. The bike is now significantly easier to get off the ground to the point that I would actually call it a fairly poppy bike, especially given its long travel nature. The whole package summed up though, it feels super racy. I keep getting mental images of Richie Rude and Jared Graves as I'm on the trail on this thing. As long as you ride this bike with a really low aggressive posture, holy moly, it goes fast. I'm calling it a malleable platform because that suspension design, at this much travel, you do start to notice the different kinematics more than you do at like the 140 and less. This suspension design holds speed really well. As you're going off roots, off little drops, smacking into things, it's very forgiving and it doesn't penalize you when you do hang that rear wheel up a little bit. Now, oftentimes bikes that have that trait, they don't get off the ground so easily, but now that I've made that shock more progressive and I've lifted up the handlebars a little bit, it gets off the ground pretty nicely. I won't say it's the best bunny hopping bike in the world, but if you watch in the footage, I'm definitely getting in the air without massive yanks. I'm sore as I can be today from the gym yesterday, but I was still able to get this bike off every single jump I wanted, and it often went further than I wanted it to, because it is a pretty fast bike. I have not yet hit real jumps with this bike. I've been trail riding it a bunch, but like in the forest on trail jumps, they're never that big. They're never this size at least. I like the way this thing jumps. I keep pumping into these jumps and then going further than I really need to. I keep thinking I'm gonna overclear the step up by like multiple bike lengths. I keep overclearing the next step up. And even the last jump, which you gotta work to clear, fully, no problem on this guy. So my impression of this bike is that it's very fast. When that comes to jumps, yes, you can clear a little bit more than you might be expecting if coming from a slightly less fast, per se, bike. Confidence inspiring indeed. A little bit less bike than the Spire, but not a ton less. It's interesting. I went ahead and switched out the shift housing from Jaguar to proper Shimano SIS. It's been a few weeks on the SB160. This bike's a lot of fun. I haven't ridden a bike this much travel since I was riding the Spire a little bit ago. I ran into a quick little issue. The rear shifting has never been as good as I'd like. And it comes with this Jaguar housing, which is very common. A ton of mountain bikes come with Jaguar housing. Normally it's okay. But on this bike, there's a lot of bends and stuff and the cable gets clamped pretty tight and there's tons of friction. So I'm gonna swap the Jaguar for a true Shimano housing and cable setup. I was thinking that would curb the funky little shifting shenanigans I was dealing with. But I also noticed that when I was tightening the rear axle, all of a sudden something really weird was happening and the hub was kind of like binding. So I figured it's probably over torqued, backed it off, and sure enough, the hub spun correctly, and I was trying to figure out what's going on. Got it all apart and was looking at it, and it seems like the rear axle was bottoming out too early or something. So I threw a washer underneath the head of the through axle, and the shifting is 100% better. It's a completely properly, like one of the best shifting bikes I own now with that good housing, and now that I fixed that rear axle. So that's a little funky little issue. We'll keep an eye on it. The best part of all these videos is taking these fun new bikes to rad new spots on a little bit of an adventure and claiming that it's part of a bike review. So I think the next best step is to go do that. So let's go someplace cool, try out some fresh trails, and then chit chat a little bit more about how the SB160 is feeling. How's that sound? It's been a few weeks since we shot that, and I gotta say, the shifting has continued to impress me. There's absolutely nothing wrong with SLX drivetrains. They work, in my opinion, just as well as the XT or XTR. I've been chipping away on a video project about some really cool trails close to the greater Seattle area. I brought the SB160 because this spot has some massive jumps. Unfortunately, they were not ready to ride in time for this. So we're gonna see the bike riding some of the more mellow, casual trails there. It's worth mentioning that a bike that's this burly and aggressive on mellower trails isn't always the best combination. If you don't ride steeper or gnarlier trails, definitely consider a bike with a little bit less travel. Not only will it be more efficient, but you'll probably have a little more fun as it's going to be even easier to get off the ground, and it's going to be easier to handle through the lower speed sections. I didn't think that was going to work, and then just went. I don't think they built the trail assuming that folks are going to do that every day. Yeah, I'm a little overbiked for this trail and this jump, but it's cool having options here because like most folks will never jump this, but if you want to, if you want to yank, you can. Another bike very similar to the SB160 is the Pivot Firebird. I really enjoyed my time on the Pivot Firebird, though it does have a very distinctly different feel from the SB160. I would say the Yeti is much more of a race-oriented bike. The Pivot is a little bit more of a trail, all-arounder focused bike. The Pivot has a noticeably shorter rear end, and while the reach is very similar, the overall bike feel is just a little bit easier on the tighter, slower trails. The rear end in particular on the Pivot is quite short, and at higher speeds, it's not as stable or confidence-inspiring as the Yeti. There's times where each bike can make more sense, and the suspension feel is different, but if you try the two back and forth, I think you'll notice the Yeti feels bigger, maybe a little faster at top speed, and the pivot feels a little bit smaller and a little bit more nimble in the lower speed trails. I wanted to make the SB160 more nimble for my local trails, so I went back down to a 40 mil stem, and ultimately, I enjoyed that feeling more than the 45 mil. Over the last few weeks, I've been using the SB160 basically as my daily driver mountain bike. So I have a bit of a problem. This bike is really fast. It goes faster than I often want to go. And I've got some pretty fun shots just showing the bike flying by, top speed. And it feels great. Like, I've hit some straightaways faster on this than any other bike ever. Incredible straight line speed. So that's awesome, but I don't want to go that fast. Not all the time. No, I don't need to race. I'm done with that. Like, I'm fine just going like quick. My adaptation has been to get lower on the bike. This bike's somewhat more stuck to the ground with more traction than say the DW, single pivot, Konas, or the Horst Link style, like the Transition and Specialized. That helps when you're trying to go really fast. It's very predictable. It's very confidence inspiring at top speed. Flip side, it's harder to get up and off the ground. Admittedly, it'd been a hot minute since I last spent time on the Ibis Ritmo V2S. While filming for the Industry 9 wheel video, I got to spend some more time on the Ritmo, and man, that is a fun bike. The Yeti is definitely a bigger, more stout bike, and it feels more confidence-inspiring at speed, once again. I would say the Ritmo almost compares more to the Pivot Firebird than to the SB160. Both bikes are great platforms, and I enjoy them both, but the Ritmo is more nimble, though more nervous at the faster speeds. Going that little shorter stem, a little bit higher up, both of those changes help to shorten the reach measurement, and that makes the bike easier to bunny hop and easier to manipulate and get into the air. A big change is that I keep myself much lower to the bike on this than my other bikes. The number one technique I would tell anyone who's coming to me for bike riding advice is to get lower on the bike. If you watch a top pro ride, they're like hovering over their bike, very, very low, very bent knees and elbows. You can see it with me, my butt's like over the rear axle, I'm so low. On this bike, that's extra important to be super low and aggressive. For some reason, that just helps out with the layout of the geometry and the suspension, just capitalize on all that speed. Gives you more options for things to do, keeps you more compact so you can really use all that fast speed. When I get low, this bike feels great. I can make it do all the cool corners, flick it through things. I can manual it however I need to, as long as I'm low and locked in. When I get more lazy and upright, then it's a little bit harder for me to ride. So I just try to remember I gotta get low on this thing, I gotta get aggro, and then it'll go fast, faster than I even wanna go. So if you're trying to increase your overall downhill speed, or if you're a racer, trying this out would not be a bad idea. SB140, great all-arounder. SB160, amazing when you wanna go fast. Very different bikes. I've been having a lot of fun on the 160. I keep trying to think about being nearsighted, and that means I'm trying to imitate Yeti athlete Sean Neer, who has some of the best mountain bike style, lines, techniques, all that out there. And he's been posting some amazing clips lately. So yeah, I try to get nearsighted and imitate things that he might do if he were around when I'm riding the SB160. I want to give a big thanks to Yeti for loaning me this bike. It's been a lot of fun riding this thing. I've learned quite a bit about myself and my own riding style. Big thanks to Jensen who made this video possible. They're a top dealer for Yeti cycles here in the United States of America, and they're an online retailer. So I've got a link in the description below at the Jensen USA website. It'll show you all of the Yeti models that Jensen has in stock. Jensen USA is a great resource if you're shopping for a sweet high-end mountain bike. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in and checking out this video. We couldn't be here without all of your support. Let me know in the comments down below, why are you most excited to ride an SB160? All right, everyone, hit the subscribe button. That'll help us all out, keep these videos coming. And most of all, peace and wheelies. I'll see you in the comments.